Okay, so Wilson comes, clear plan, first 4 years, okay. Look at B2. This will be something that you need to know about Wilson. Attack the triple wall of privilege. Tariff banks trust. TBT. Tariff banks trust. We're about really to almost be towards the end of having to discuss and talk about tariffs. Tariffs are going to take us into this big, giant Great Depression. He is going to really work on this triple wall of privilege. You should know that Wilson is part of the triple wall of privilege, right? He is a person that has benefited from privilege. So Underwood-Taft tariff bill, in an unprecedented mood, called Congress into special session and read a message in person. And this Underwood tariff bill is going to pass. The provisions reduce. So this will be our first tariff that really reduces. So my brain, my lack of ADD brain says Underwood under tariff. So this is going to reduce the tariff. And it is going to, number 4B, enact a graduated income tax. And this will become our 16th Amendment, an income tax, a graduated income tax. And again, this is gigantic. We all now pay income taxes. Most of you are probably getting ready to pay income taxes for the first time ever. You have to file no matter how much money you make. Hopefully all of you get it all back. But this was a really landmark provision that the government can take part of the money that you work to earn. So that, again, is how we're able to reduce the tariff. So please make sure you understand how that balance, right? We know the only way government makes money is to tax. So what Wilson said is if we reduce the tariff, we have to make that money up somewhere else. So now we have to do an income tax. Anytime, and this is, again, not a government class, but it's just something that your brain should know as a person, as a smart kid, as a smart citizen, as you begin to move forward in your life. When governments reduce things, when they reduce taxes, they have to make the money up somewhere else. They have to. And so when they reduce things, they either have to reduce their budget or they have to get money from somewhere else. And so that's what Wilson said. We're going to reduce this tariff, but we're going to have to get the money from somewhere else. And so the somewhere else becomes an income tax. Please take a look. Rate of 1% on incomes over $1,000 or $4,000 and 7% on incomes over $500,000. Less, probably only about 20% of our population made over $4,000. So 80% of the population not affected by this at all. Notice again that they're targeting people that have money. Right? That income tax is on people that have money, not people that don't have money. By 1917, revenue from income tax exceeded tariffs, and now we don't have to have them anymore, which is, again, one of the reasons we don't have tariffs. On the top of page 18 is one of the longest lasting impacts that Wilson will have. And here's what you should know about Wilson. If we took Wilson's white supremacy off the table, he would probably be remembered as one of the greatest presidents in the 20th century. Let me throw that thing out there. And again, please make sure that this is not a 21st century kind of thing. This is why President Wilson, we're going to talk about a lot of bad things he does, but he does some tremendously excellent things for our country, especially financially. Federal Reserve Act created the Federal Reserve System. And now we have that instead of our Bank of the United States. So the bus goes away, and what we get is the Federal Reserve Act, the Federal Reserve. It works kind of the same as the National Bank in that it protects deposits, but it gives a much more stable economy to the country. Showed its weakness during the Panic of 1907, and so We now have a third bus, but we call it something different. It's the Federal Reserve. We still have the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve sets interest rates. The Federal Reserve guides the banking system and will, again, start us on this really important, stable economy that's going to blow up in the 1930s, like major blow up. Reserves concentrated in New York and other large cities, and that will be one of the reasons why we want to spread this across. The country is divided into 13 districts, with each one having a major bank. So if you have a check, if those of you that actually physically have checks, or you've been asked your routing number for anything that you fill out online, that routing number tells you what district you're in. So if you give that routing number to people that have been in banking forever, they know exactly where you live and what bank you do banking with, because that routing number tells them that. Federal Reserve Act was signed into law in 1913, most significant economic legislation between Civil War and New Deal. Provisions at the bottom. Federal Reserve appointed by the president oversaw a nationwide, it's 12, not 13, sorry, 12 regional districts, each with its own central bank. And again, the power to issue money, and we start again on a stable banking system. It only takes a gazillion years for Alexander Hamilton's plan to become a real plan in legislation and no longer at the mercy of charters and people hating the Bank of the United States. Top of page 19, he gets the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and this is going to try to take hold of Wall Street. So this is how we are looking at trust and stocks and the sale of stocks. And it, again, will still exist. We still have the FTC. They still oversee commissions of trading systems, all that other stuff. Clayton Antitrust Act. This, again, will work to help shore up these antitrust legislation and trying to bust up trust. Exempted labor and agricultural organizations from antitrust prosecution. And this, again, Clayton Antitrust Act is one of the most important steps toward really removing trust and helping to support unions. Look at the bottom of page 19, and I would put a box around that. By 1917, the AFL membership had grown to 3 million. So we are slowly allowing unions to exist and increase in their significance and power. So on page 20, here is a gigantic list of all the progressive things that Wilson does, which again, when you look at it, it's like, wow, why isn't his face on Mount Rushmore? Again, remember, white supremacist across his forehead, because these are awesome things that are going to happen during his presidency. Federal Farm Loan Act of 1916. So any farmers in this, you begin to, or family farmers or business farms begin to get loans at a different rate. And this is the beginnings of protecting farms from being swept away or their land taken away because of bad loans. Warehouse Act authorized loans on security of stable crops. Federal Highway Act of 1916, prior to getting highway construction in rural areas. Pretty sure some of these roads in Indiana were still covered under this Highway Act of 1916. Every time my mom comes to visit, I don't think my mom comes to visit that we have driven home from the airport that 70 has not been under construction. My mom just thinks, like, they don't ever finish this road. Like, nope, they don't ever finish this road, Mom. Seriously. You think, those of you that drive to Indianapolis at any time, when was the last time you drove on Highway 70 that there was not construction somewhere, the way there or the way back? Continually. My mom's like, is this just a perpetual project? Do they just leave the barrels out? Yes, Mom, that's what they do. workingmen's compensation. So gives assistance to federal. Please, again, make sure Wilson only has control over federal jobs. But the Workmen's Compensation Act of 1916 gives assistance to federal civil service employees during periods of disability. And that's the idea that what these progressives can do hopefully will trickle down to other businesses. Child Labor Act, restricted child labor on products. Again, interstate commerce. That's the only thing that the government can control is interstate commerce, commerce that crosses state lines. And Adamson Act established an 8-hour workday for all employees on trains in interstate commerce with extra pay for overtime and minimum 16-hour shifts. Ooh, think about that, a 16-hour shift. That's a long day. Minimum wage and prison and reform schools to shift from punishment to rehabilitation. That is an excellent list of things, especially if we think about where the country was at before this time period. So the progressives will be very successful in many of their lists of things that they want to change about the government. Now, the issue is all of this legal? Right? It is, again, as what Woodrow Wilson says, the courts or the Congress should pass laws, courts should enforce them. But are they legal? Are they constitutional? And this is where we will begin these lists of things about a lot of these laws that the Supreme Court will say, nope, you can't do that. Nope, you can't do that. And you can't do that. One of them, again, will be the 10-hour workday. Lochner versus New York represented a setback for the 10-hour workday. The court says, no, you can't tell a business that they can only hire people for 10 hours. You can't do that. It's not your business. You can't do that. It's not your business. Business, you can't do that. So that rolls it back. In 1918, overturned the Child Labor Act. Nope, you can't tell a business they can't hire children. You can't do that. Adkins versus Children's Hospital overturned the minimum wage law in Washington, D.C. for women. Nope, you don't have the right to do that. So progressives will be pushing all of this legislation forward. The Supreme Court will be pulling it all back, saying nope, 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 because the Supreme Court at this time still is ruling in the eyes of hands off, let business do their thing, right? Hands off. Top of page 21 is probably one of the most important court cases, and you need to remember this one like you remember Marbury versus Madison, right? Anyone want to throw out Marbury versus Madison? It means, and it established judicial review. Thank you very much. Schneck versus United States will be our next one, and then the next one after that will be Brown versus Board of Education, which I hope some of you already know what that one is. Schneck versus the United States is our freedom of speech. What speech is protected? This one, Schneck versus the United States, and then we'll have, towards the end, we'll have Johnson versus Texas, which will be about burning the flag, which Mr. Johnson said is protected speech, and the Supreme Court said, yes, it is protected speech, that you have the right to burn a flag, and it's protected speech. So Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes stated that Congress could limit free speech when the words presented a clear and present danger. So if you say things that will bring danger, and for instance, you cannot cry fire when you're in the middle of, he says, a crowded theater. You can't scream fire. That's not protected speech. That presents a clear and present danger. So from this point forward, the Supreme Court and probably won't, I don't know if they'll take up another case on free speech, but that's been the line that we've held, clear and present danger. That is why you can stand on a street corner and say, I hate the president, but you can't say, I'd like to kill the president. You say, I'd like to kill the president. Oh, I just recorded that. As an example, FBI will be knocking on your door, right? You can't create clear and present danger. So that's been our line of freedom of speech. That line, as we've moved into the 21st century with hate speech, really starts to press the window. But at this point, the importance of protecting freedom of thought, not free thought for those who agree with us, but freedom for those we hate. So that will be that important Schneck versus United States freedom of speech. Wilson will appoint Louis Brandeis as the first Jew to the Supreme Court in 1916, and he will have a long legacy on the Supreme Court as a member and a justice. He is a people's attorney, Bueller versus Morgan. He served 23 years, reputation as greatest legal thinker. Then we're going to get to page 21. I'm sorry, on page 21, our last topic of the day is prohibition of alcohol. So if you are given anything to write about, evaluate the extent of the progressive era, you have a whole lot of good stuff. Women get the right to vote. We get to elect senators. Got to have some bad stuff. And the bad stuff is going to be prohibition. The bad stuff is prohibition. And the prohibition is not about the idea of prohibiting alcohol. We're not making a distinction about prohibiting alcohol is good or bad. What we will be talking about is what happens as a result of trying to eliminate alcohol. So what happens in bottom of page 21, by 1914, half of the United States lived in dry territory. So what a dry county means is exactly that. You cannot buy alcohol in that county. A dry county means no alcohol can be bought. Counties like my county and Wayne County in North Carolina is a weird county in that, I think I've mentioned this before, you could only buy alcohol still to this day, if I'm not mistaken, in stores run by the state or the federal government. They're called ABC stores. I have no idea what ABC stands for. That's the only place that you can buy alcohol, not beer. You can't walk in the aisles. You have to go up to the counter. You got to tell them what you want. They hand it to you. You pay for it. Beer is only, I think you could buy beer just about anywhere. If you go to a restaurant, there are no mixed drinks. You can't go into an Outback and get a margarita. They don't sell them. You can bring your own bottle, order the stuff and pour it, but they don't serve it. I say this and not having been back in about 10 years, so I don't know. But that was always a big thing, trying to pass liquor by the drink is what it's called. So there are counties like that. There are counties where there was no alcohol at all. 3/4 of the total area had outlawed saloons. But as you can well imagine, in big cities, alcohol was still available everywhere. Most all of this was in very rural areas, right, where there was no liquor. So we get the idea that we need to ban alcohol. So at the top of page 22, the 18th Amendment, passed in 1919, in the middle of World War I, banned, and please make sure you look at all of this, the sale, transportation, manufacturing, or consumption of alcohol. So we passed this first with zero ways to enforce it. So all of us, I just used the FBI, but there's nothing. There's no federal law enforcement in 1919. There's no way to enforce these laws. Zero. Until we pass the Volstead Act to enforce the 18th Amendment. Again, eventually, greatest failure of the progressive era. It is the greatest failure. Why? I'm going to keep going, people. We got to go to women's suffrage, and we got to get there because we got to finish. So why is it one of the greatest failures? Because of crime. This begins a criminal process of manufacturing and transporting alcohol. So people get into the making it. And when my California husband, whose parents got stationed in the town where I lived, and he came to live with them, in his Jeep would want to just go out driving around Wayne County. I'm like, honey, you better be really careful what roads you decide to go down, because you might go down a road where someone might be meeting you at the end of a shotgun. Because we had people that ran moonshine. I hope all of you probably know already that NASCAR resulted as running moonshine. We had people in my high school that I graduated with who were dirt poor, but drove the nicest cars you ever seen, like 1982 Camaros, 1982 Jeeps that had no back seat. Jeannie Lassiter, why does your car not have a back seat? I was dumb. I asked. Someone said, you better shut up. You want to die? No, I don't want to die. We had people running moonshine regularly in Wayne County all the time. I'm pretty sure it's still there. I don't know. But if the Lassiters are still alive, I know they are. They were scary people. So we have all of that happening. And what sadly is going to happen, because we know the 21st Amendment takes back and says, okay, we were wrong, everybody can drink alcohol. What happens then is all these organized criminal units just move to something else, and that something else becomes drugs. That something else becomes heroin, becomes cocaine, and it comes into the United States and wreaks havoc. I know most of you think that that's like a new thing, or a recent thing, but people have been shooting up heroin, and at that time it's mostly heroin that comes into the United States that people are using way before. If you want to watch some really funny movies, watch some 1940s and 50 movies about heroin junkies and being on the Needle Park. There's all kinds of movies about it. All right, so that will stop us for the day. I wanted to get through that. Okay.